The hum of the old fan came first, a tired, uneven sound that used to drive her crazy. It filled the small study like a pulse, steady and worn. The laptop screen blinked awake under my fingers, blue light washing over the same wooden desk where she used to pay bills and send birthday emails. Her coffee mug was still there, the one with the chipped handle and the faint lipstick mark she'd never scrubbed off. I thought I was ready to go through her things. I wasn't. When my wife Lila passed away last winter, everyone kept telling me grief comes in waves. But no one mentioned how quiet the house would get between them. The silence isn't soft, it's thick, almost heavy, like humidity that settles into your lungs. I kept walking past that study for weeks, pretending I didn't see the door half open. Her handwriting still covered the corkboard, lists, appointments, reminders to buy lemons. There was something about the way she used to organize everything that made me feel like she could still come back and finish one more list. It took me 3 months to open the laptop. Her sister Mia had offered to help sort through her files. "It's good closure," she said, in that careful tone people use when they're trying to hand you a life raft you didn't ask for. But I wanted to do it alone. Maybe part of me thought I'd find something comforting. Old photos, half-finished letters to our son, recipes she'd never cooked. I didn't expect whatever it was I found that night. The password came easy. Her birthday, plus the last 2 digits of our anniversary. I smiled, just barely, when it worked. That was her. Sentimental, even in her security questions. The desktop was cluttered, as always. Dozens of folders. Work, house stuff, taxes 2022, ideas. It felt like walking into her mind again, a place equal parts order and chaos. I started with photos. There she was, smiling in every frame, arms around friends, hair wild in the wind at Lake George. For a while, that's all it was. Nostalgia in pixels. Then I clicked on drafts. It wasn't curiosity at first, just muscle memory. I'd helped her with emails before, but when I saw the subject line, my stomach drew tight. To him. No name, just him. I froze. My first thought was it had to be about someone ordinary, a coworker, maybe a family member she'd avoided naming. But then the date caught my eye, 2 weeks before she died. The body of the email was short, unfinished, but one line stuck out even before I could process the rest. I never told him the truth because I thought protecting him was kinder. For a second, I couldn't tell who him was, me or someone else entirely. I sat back in the chair, hearing the faint click of the fan like it was mocking me. There were other drafts, 6 of them, each with slight variations in the subject. To him, rewrite. To him, final maybe. To him, don't send yet. It was the final maybe that I clicked next. The text filled the screen. You deserve the truth, but I can't give it to you face to face. You were kind, even when I wasn't. If I leave before I can say it, I hope you understand. He never knew. It was always you. The cursor blinked at the end of that sentence, waiting for something more that never came. I read it twice, 3 times. By the 5th, I started noticing the little details, how the timestamps didn't line up, how the versions seemed edited on different nights, all in the same week she'd been sick, all while she told me she was too tired to talk. I wanted to believe she was writing to me. God, I did. But my name wasn't anywhere in those drafts, and Lila wasn't the type to call me you. She used my name like punctuation. Daniel, can you grab that? Daniel, listen to this. Daniel, don't forget the lights. The absence of it in those lines felt deliberate. Like whoever you was, he already knew. That night I didn't sleep. I made coffee at 1 a.m, black and bitter. The taste kept me anchored to something real. I pulled up her email app, checked sent messages, trash folders, anything that could tell me more. She'd deleted nothing. Typical. But buried deep, under an old label called Work, I found an archive thread with an unfamiliar address. Mhalis 67it. The name didn't ring a bell. I opened it. The first email was dated 6 years ago. Subject, long time no see. The next few were friendlier. How's the city treating you? Miss the old crew. That song still reminds me of you. I scrolled through nearly 50 exchanges. None were explicitly romantic, but there was a closeness that didn't belong to strangers. Inside jokes, shared memories, references to Our Spot and That Spring. Then, a shift around 2 years ago. He asked me about the trip again. I told him it was for work. I hate lying. You don't have to keep lying. You know I'll always understand. If things were different, it hit like a slow rolling tide, grief turning into something heavier. The woman I'd married, the one who sang off key in the kitchen and left post-its on my coffee mug, had been carrying something I never saw. And maybe someone. I thought about calling Mia, about asking if she knew a Michael Hollis or an M. Hollis. But every time I pictured the conversation, I heard how it would sound. Hey, your sister might have had someone else. Did she ever mention that? Instead, I turned back to the drafts, reading between the lines until my eyes blurred. The cursor blinked like a metronome, steady, unforgiving. Around dawn, I went to her closet. The smell of her perfume, clean, citrusy, faintly floral, hit me like a ghost. I found her old journals stacked neatly in a fabric box. Lila was a lifelong note-keeper, always writing lists, sketches, recipes. It felt wrong to read them, but after the email, right and wrong felt like irrelevant words. The first few pages were ordinary. Grocery budgets, ideas for anniversary gifts, snippets of lyrics. Then, halfway through one notebook, a line stopped me cold. If he ever reads this, I hope he forgives me for the silence. I didn't mean to love two people, just happened that way. I sat on the floor, notebook in hand, the world shrinking to the smell of paper and the soft thud of my heart. Two people, two truths, and one I never knew I was sharing. Grief is strange. It doesn't just hurt, it rearranges things. I started replaying memories like crime scene footage. Where was she on those girls' weekends? Who was she texting when she smiled at her phone? Every kindness, every tired sigh began to mean something else. The worst part wasn't anger. It was confusion. How could someone so present be living a second life in her head? Did she plan to tell me? Did he know she was dying? By noon, I'd printed the drafts. There was something about holding them on paper, physical, undeniable, that made it harder but also clearer. Each sheet trembled in my hand as I laid them out on the table, trying to piece together a timeline. One line from the final draft haunted me most. You never asked for more than I could give. That's why I never told you how much I took. What did she take? From me? From him? The phrasing felt like a confession, but without the crime. I went for a walk. The air was sharp, February cold, biting at my lungs. The neighborhood looked the same, kids biking, a dog barking behind a fence, but nothing matched inside me. I passed the park where we used to sit on Sundays, her reading, me pretending to read while watching her smile at strangers. Every memory now carried a question mark. When I came back, there was a voicemail from her doctor's office. A routine follow-up, apparently some leftover paperwork. I called back, mostly to hear a human voice. The nurse on the line mentioned something about a contact form they'd tried to reach. It listed another emergency contact, she said casually. I paused. Another? Yes, a Michael Hollis. I didn't say anything. The silence must have stretched long enough that she apologized, thinking she'd said something wrong. I thanked her and hung up. The room felt smaller after that. The fan kept humming. Somewhere in the hallway, the floor creaked like it used to when she'd pace during phone calls. That night, I found a USB drive taped under her desk drawer, a tiny black stick labeled only MH. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. When I plugged it in, a single folder appeared. Photos, don't delete. Inside were dozens of pictures, most of them familiar trips and events, but a few I'd never seen. A beach I didn't recognize, her smiling beside a man I couldn't name, sunglasses, wind in her hair, hand brushing his shoulder. In one photo, she wore the necklace I'd given her for our 10th anniversary, the same one she said she lost years ago. I zoomed in on the man's face, mid-40s, dark hair graying at the temples, tan skin. He didn't look like a stranger. There was something painfully ordinary about him, like someone you might pass in a grocery store and never think twice about. The timestamps matched the emails, 2 summers ago. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. No tears, just a hollow ache that kept spreading. Part of me wanted to smash that USB, pretend none of it existed, but another part, the same stubborn part that made me open the laptop in the first place, needed to know everything. So I wrote his name on a scrap of paper, Michael Hollis. And underneath it, why him? The next morning I called information services. There were a few listings for that name, but one matched the email domain, a small marketing firm downtown. It took me an hour to drive there. I parked across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart hammering like I was about to confess to something instead of uncover it. Through the glass doors I saw him. Same face, older now, leaning over a desk with a mug in his hand, laughing at something on a colleague's screen, completely unaware that the man who buried her was watching from across the street. I didn't go in. Not yet. I just sat there, staring, realizing I was about to step into a part of my wife's life she never meant me to see. And somehow, I still wanted to understand. That night, I couldn't stop replaying the question in my head. What truth was she trying to protect? Because if she'd truly loved him, why stay with me? And if she loved me, why keep him around? The drafts didn't read like guilt. They read like a woman trying to draw a line she kept crossing. Maybe she never meant for either of us to find out. Maybe dying left the secret unfinished. I don't know what I'll do next, but tomorrow, I think I'll drive back. Maybe talk to him, maybe not. All I know is, after everything, I still can't bring myself to hate her. It was 8:43 when I parked in front of the office again. The same car, same curb, same crack in the asphalt. The sky hung gray, like the color of paper before ink touches it. I sat there for almost 20 minutes, watching people come and go. None of them him. My phone buzzed twice in that span, both messages from Mia asking if I'd eaten. I didn't answer. When Michael finally walked out, he looked smaller than the man in those pictures. Thinner, a little older. He held a paper cup and balanced a briefcase against his hip like he'd done it 1,000 times. I watched him cross the street, pass within 10 feet of my car. The strangest thing was how ordinary he seemed. I had imagined something cinematic, something with tension or guilt carved into his face. Instead, he looked like a man on his way to lunch. I could have rolled down the window, said his name, but I didn't. I just sat there, tracing his reflection in the side mirror until he disappeared into a sandwich shop. Back home, the house smelled faintly of her perfume again. I used to think it lingered because she sprayed too much on her scarves, but now I know it's just what memory does. Clings to the air, refuses to fade. I opened the laptop again, not out of curiosity this time, but duty. I needed to see if there was more. Another draft, another clue. There wasn't. But there was a folder I hadn't noticed before, buried inside documents old. Its title, Letters Never Sent. It was full. Dozens of files, each starting with a name. Dad, Mia, Daniel, Michael. I opened the one with my name first. It was dated 3 years ago. You always said love is choosing the same person even when it's not easy. You never asked if I was still choosing you. Maybe that's why I didn't know how to answer anymore. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even bitter. Just tired. A kind of confession written by someone who had already forgiven me for not knowing her better. Then I opened Michael. You reminded me who I was before I became careful. I hate that kindness can feel like betrayal when it comes from the wrong person. I sat there, the glow of the screen cutting through the dark. Every line felt deliberate, every sentence like a confession without punctuation. She didn't delete these. She saved them, carefully, in a folder named for the unsent. Like she wanted to be found someday, but not right away. Mia stopped by later that afternoon. She brought soup and that worried expression she tries to hide behind polite small talk. I hadn't told her about the emails. Not yet, but she knew something was off. "You're not eating," she said, glancing at the untouched bowl. "And you look like you've been running marathons in your head." I smiled thinly. You could say that. When she went to the kitchen, I looked at her and wondered, had Lila told her? Sisters keep secrets that husbands never hear. The thought sat in my chest like a splinter. As she was leaving, she paused at the doorway. "You know, Lila once told me she wished she'd been braver about certain things. I thought she meant work. Maybe she didn't." I didn't ask what she meant. I think we both knew better than to say it out loud. That night I dreamed of her. Not the way she looked near the end, but years before, standing by the ocean, laughing at something I said. The wind tugged at her hair, and she turned toward me like she wanted to say something, but the words were lost in the waves. I woke up with her name in my mouth, half a sob, half a whisper. The first thing I did was check the laptop again. Not for new files, for the details I'd missed. Metadata, timestamps, file origins. I didn't want to be a detective, but that's what grief does. It turns you into one. Every deleted keystroke becomes evidence. One file, buried deep in system storage, had a different author name attached, MH. It was a letter, short, no subject line. She said you made her feel safe, that she never meant for any of this to happen. Please don't blame her. The line hit harder than I expected. It wasn't signed, but the date matched the day after her diagnosis. He had written to me, or meant to. Maybe she never sent it. Maybe he left it here for her to decide. I don't know which thought hurt more, that he cared enough to write, or that he believed I'd find it someday. Around noon, I drove again. Not to his office this time, but to the place I recognized from the photos. A beach 2 hours south, near a small town called Harbor Glen. It was quiet in the off-season. The same pier, the same pale blue benches, the same curve of shoreline I'd seen on her screen. The air smelled like salt and rain. I walked the stretch they had once walked, the wood creaking under my boots. Every step felt like I was chasing someone else's ghost. Hers, his, maybe my own. Halfway down, I sat on the bench she'd been sitting on in one of those pictures, the necklace catching sunlight against her skin. I tried to picture what she'd said here. What promises she'd made. What silence she'd chosen instead. A fisherman nearby reeled in a line, nodded at me, said, "Weather's turning." His voice was casual, harmless. Still, it broke something small in me. I nodded back and said, "Yeah, it usually does." When I got home, I found a small envelope wedged inside one of her recipe books. It wasn't hidden, just misplaced. My name on the front, written in her looping handwriting. No seal, no stamp. Inside, a folded sheet of stationery. Her words, one last time. If you're reading this, I'm sorry. Not because I lied, because I didn't know how to tell the truth without breaking something good. You were my home. But sometimes, home isn't the only place we need to feel alive. Don't hate me for needing both. She signed it L. I read it until the paper softened from my hands. Then I set it on the table beside the printed drafts, the USB, the journals, her private constellation of half-truths and apologies. That's when the phone rang. It was an unknown number, local area code. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, curiosity, punishment, fate, made me pick up. Daniel? The voice was cautious, low, familiar from the emails. Yeah, I said. Who's this? A pause. It's Michael Hollis. The air around me shifted. The fan hummed, same as always, but it sounded different now. I didn't speak. I just let the silence hang until he filled it. I think we should talk about her. He didn't sound defensive, not even guilty, just tired, like he'd been rehearsing the call for months, maybe years. I said, where? There's a coffee shop on 8th and Turner. Tomorrow, noon. Before I could reply, the line went dead. The next morning, I drove there early. The place was small, quiet, smelled like roasted beans and rain on asphalt. I picked the corner seat, the kind with a view of both the door and the window. The barista asked if I wanted anything. I said, just water. When he walked in, I recognized him instantly. Same man, same face, but in person, he looked more real. The lines deeper, the eyes weary in a way that only loss carves. He saw me, hesitated, then came over. Daniel, he said softly. I nodded. Michael. He sat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the clinking of cups and the faint hum of a song I didn't know. Finally, he said, she told me she loved you. Always did. It was a strange thing to hear from him, and maybe the strangest part was that I believed him. She loved you too, I said, not as accusation, but as fact. He didn't deny it. She didn't mean to, he murmured. We met before you two got married, lost touch. Years later, we ran into each other. She thought she could handle it. She couldn't, I said. He nodded. Neither could I. For a long time, we just sat there. Two men who loved the same woman, sharing the same absence. Then he reached into his jacket and slid something across the table. A flash drive, identical to the one I'd found. She asked me to give you this if she didn't make it. I wasn't sure if I should. What's on it? I asked. She said it's everything she couldn't say out loud. I didn't open it at the cafe. I waited until I got home, until the house was quiet again. The fan clicked on cue, steady as a heartbeat. I plugged the drive in, a single file, for Daniel Dempey-4. It took a moment to load. Then there she was, Lila, sitting in that same study, hair tied back, wearing the soft blue sweater I'd given her the year before. She looked straight into the camera, smiled faintly. Hey, you, she said. If you're watching this, I guess I didn't get to tell you everything. I froze. She took a breath. You were my best friend, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I can't pretend parts of me didn't belong somewhere else. I met Michael before you. I thought I'd been buried that chapter. I didn't realize how deep it went. Her eyes flicked away for a second, then back. It wasn't about choosing between you. It was about forgiving myself for being two different people, one who loved the life we built and one who missed who I was before it. The video cut for a second, then returned. Her voice was softer. I never planned to keep it from you forever. I just ran out of time. Static filled the last few seconds. Then it ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the frozen frame of her face. There was no villain in it, no hero, just two people who got lost between love and truth. When Mia called later, I let it ring. I needed the silence. I deleted nothing. I saved the files, labeled them neatly, just like she used to do. One folder. Her story, unfinished. I don't know what forgiveness looks like yet. Maybe it's just continuing to live inside a world that still smells like her. Maybe it's knowing that even betrayal can coexist with love. Tomorrow, I'll call Michael. Not to fight, just to talk. Because if there's one thing I finally understand, it's that grief and truth are sometimes the same thing, wearing different faces. The next morning came like a dull ache, the kind that lingers, quiet but heavy. I woke before sunrise, not because I couldn't sleep, but because my mind wouldn't let me. The house still smelled faintly of rain from the night before, mixed with her scent that somehow refused to fade. I sat at the kitchen table, the video still open on the laptop. Her frozen face on the screen, paused mid-blink, looked almost alive. I kept staring at it. The soft light of dawn crept through the blinds and painted stripes across the floor. That's when I noticed her old journal sitting on the counter, the one I'd flipped through but never finished. The blue leather cover had warped edges from years of use. I opened it without really thinking, maybe out of habit, maybe because I was looking for some reason to keep her close. Near the back, there were a few loose pages folded in. One had a date at the top, October 18th, 2 years ago. The handwriting was rushed, less careful than her usual looping script. He asked if I regret anything. I said no, because every choice still led me here. But sometimes, I wonder if I mistook comfort for peace. It didn't sound like guilt. It sounded like longing. And the strangest thing was, for a moment I understood it. I didn't call Michael right away. I thought about it all morning, phone in hand, thumb hovering over his number. But what do you say to the man who held the same woman's heart in parallel to yours? I'd already seen his face, heard his voice, and felt his grief. There was no enemy left to confront, just reflection. By noon, I walked out of the house, leaving the laptop open like a vigil. I drove with no destination until I found myself outside the hospice center where Lila spent her last week. The parking lot was half empty, same cracked pavement, same wind chime by the entrance that never stopped ringing. The receptionist recognized me immediately. "Mr. Harper, right?" "Yeah." My voice came out quieter than I meant. She smiled gently. "You left some of your wife's belongings here. We meant to call." She handed me a small box. Inside was a ring, her wedding band, and a USB recorder I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened as I turned it over. A small label on the back read, "Audio log, March." Back home, I plugged it into the laptop. Static first, then her voice, soft, faint, like she was speaking from another room. March 12th. The pain's been worse this week. Daniel doesn't talk about it, but I can see it in his face. He still checks on me like I might get up and cook dinner. Sometimes I want to tell him about Michael, just to stop pretending, but I can't. Not when he's already losing me this way. It would break him twice. She exhaled audibly, the mic catching every breath. "Michael keeps writing. I told him not to visit again. He wanted to, but I couldn't do that to Daniel. He doesn't deserve more confusion. I wish love wasn't so damn complicated." The recording ended abruptly with a soft click. I didn't move for a long time. The sound of her voice, the cadence, the pauses, it felt alive, like she was still here, trapped inside that device. When I finally shut it off, the silence felt wrong, too clean. That night, I poured a drink I didn't need. Sat on the couch, lights off, her voice still replaying in my head. I thought about every moment I'd assumed was mundane. Her quietness, her tired eyes, her long walks at dusk. Maybe she'd been carrying that weight alone the entire time. And maybe the truth she left wasn't for punishment, but mercy. I called Michael. It rang 3 times before he picked up. "It's Daniel," I said. "I know," he replied softly. There was a pause. Neither of us wanted to fill it with small talk. Finally, I said, "She left more recordings. She mentioned you." He sighed. "I figured she might. She told me she was going to record something near the end." "She said you wrote," I added, "that you didn't visit again." "I didn't. She asked me not to. I loved her enough to listen." The words hit harder than I expected. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. He hesitated. "Because it wasn't my story to tell, and because she wanted you to remember her as your wife, not your rival's secret." The line went quiet, only our breathing, out of sync but sharing the same grief. "I don't hate you," I said, surprising myself. "I don't blame you," he replied. A week passed, then another. Life didn't change much on the outside. I still made the same coffee every morning, still sorted mail addressed to both our names, still checked the porch light before bed. But inside, something shifted. The anger dulled. The ache didn't vanish. It simply stopped burning. One evening, I drove back to Harbor Glen. The sun was low, the tide curling lazily against the pier. I sat on that same bench again, the same spot where she'd once smiled beside him, and pulled out the printed drafts from my jacket pocket. The pages fluttered in the wind, soft and fragile. I read them one more time, not as betrayal, but as a map of a woman who had tried to love too much in too little time. A seagull cried overhead. The sound startled me back into the present. I stood, walked to the edge of the pier, and watched the water catch the orange glow of sunset. Then, one by one, I let the pages go. They hit the surface gently, spreading out like petals. Maybe forgiveness isn't a single act. Maybe it's this, the quiet choice to stop collecting proof and start letting go of it. A few weeks later, I met Michael again. We didn't plan it. We just ended up at the same park, both staring at the same empty bench. He noticed me first. "You came back," he said. "So did you." He smiled faintly, then nodded toward the lake. She liked this place, said the air tasted cleaner here. We stood in silence for a while. Then he said, "I think she wanted you to find those things. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was preparing you." I looked down at my hands. Preparing me for what? For the truth, and maybe for forgiveness. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the ring from the hospice box. I turned it between my fingers, catching the fading sunlight on its edge. "I think she already got it," I said quietly. "From both of us." He nodded. Then he reached into his wallet and handed me a small Polaroid, her standing on that same pier, smiling, holding a cup of coffee. "You should have this," he said. I took it, folded it carefully. "Thank you." As he walked away, I realized I didn't feel the bitterness anymore. Just the strange peace that comes when the truth finally stops echoing. That night, I left the laptop open again, this time not for answers, but for memory. The fan hummed softly beside it. On the screen, her video thumbnail sat frozen, her smile mid-frame. I whispered, almost without meaning to, "I forgive you, Lila." And for the first time in months, the silence that followed didn't hurt. The next morning, I opened a blank email. No recipient, no subject. Just a single line typed slowly at the top. "You deserve the truth too." Then I saved it to drafts, closed the lid, not as closure, but as continuity, because some stories don't end when love does. They just settle, quietly, into what's left of us. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.